I am a English, European and pan-Western nationalist because I believe in Western civilization and its values. I'm also, because of this, a social democrat. Now, many things have been said about by Niall Ferguson and his detractors about Western civilization's expansion into Africa, Asia, South America, and Central America, and North America, and the Australasias and Indonesia, and also eventually, of course, during World War Two, Japan and its sphere of influence. There is undoubtedly something that we can all agree on, that um, there is seldom a part of the world that Western civilization in its various forms, various nations and empires, which all have tried to be or draw inspiration from the Roman Empire. You can even say this about America or even the European Union today. Um, Despite the fact that overall the various different factions within America are either pro-Israeli or Israeli dominated, and therefore the American establishment is an Anglo-Jewish establishment, whereas in the European Union it's a Anglo-German establishment. Okay, basically in Europe it's the Nordic Celtic people who are the majority and who rule the land, right, uh, of Europe. But not to get into the complete details of everything that happened during the different European empires, but even a Marxist historian said that there existed before um, the European conquest some various tribes or civilizations, but when the Europeans came, in their various guises, Spanish, English, American, and others, that's continued through to this century, that technology and ideas are the most important thing, have been brought to Africa or brought to South America or brought to Asia or the subcontinent or various other places, things that didn't exist before. In terms of Australia and America, um, particularly, that whole new nations were formed, and of course South Africa is a civilization which was formed by the Boers. Now the Xhosa were there, of course, before the Boers, but of course the Boers then bought and traded and moved on into uninhabited areas before the Zulus arrived in South Africa, and there created the Free State. This, since ultra conservatism arose, which had long roots from the guild system in the medieval ages through Freemasonry and then into ultra conservatism and neoclassicalism, which is important for what I'm about to say next, developed into Thatcherism, which of course was an attempt at sweeping away the social democratic values of Europe, which and England's, principally England, because England developed social democracy through the Union movement, which also has its roots in the Middle Ages and the guild system. But this, of course, has failed, and the European Union is the evidence that ultra conservatism has failed, despite Andreas Breivik's treasonous actions in Norway, killing 93 of his own people. Ultra conservatives terrorism, even though it's got the BNP, the EDL, and others, and UKIP particularly, has not been able to defeat the university system, which is between England and Germany, which created the EU after the Second World War and from the victorious conquest of the British armies, which swept away both Nazism, National Socialism in Germany, and eventually defeated the Soviet Union. However, as the inherent demand for labour is there, ultra-conservatism has had an effect. It did defeat the unions in the 1970s and 80s. It did help bring before that immigration because of the collapse of the British Empire, or basically the Americans through the Bretton Woods Agreement telling the British after the Second World War that there would be no British Empire, and also, of course the university system, which was social democratic, also wanted Britain to be a true democracy after the Second World War. But because of the multiculturalist infiltration of social democracy, not only were the ultra conservatives able to bring in immigration to make an imperial project within England, which undercut the English wages and destroyed the unions to keep a pool of cheap labour there, right? Which has become the underclass, which you can see evidence of in terms of a multiracial underclass, which will eventually become completely non-English during the summer riots. Okay, now it's evident that the ANC was helped by Thatcher and helped by the Soviet Union, two conflicting organisations, yeah, to bring the ANC in, which caused the farm murders and the genocide of Boer people in South Africa. It's often claimed by moral relativists who usually are either establishment multiculturalists or, on the other side, New World Order ultra-conservatives, okay, which of course they have the financial backing of Exxon and Halliburton, who have killed far more non-Europeans and Europeans than anyone else in recent history, apart from the Soviet Union, and China, and it is evident that the communist element is still there as well, which has destroyed the populations of their own states. You know, I will do a video on the death of the Russian nation, which may lead to the development of a state which is at its basis on Russia, but it's now had very few Russians in it, and that's the effect of the Soviet Union. But what I'm trying to get at is counter colonization, which is immigration, is based on an idea in neoclassical economics that all people and all their actions and all their consumerism are the same, because in ultra-conservative views, the market psychologically dominates the individual, as opposed to in communism, a vanguard elite, as Lenin demonstrates, controls the population through fear and threatening people's families. And it was ultra-conservatives and aristocrats who, of course, sent Lenin to Russia. Lenin was Jewish. He didn't and a Zionist and a communist. So he didn't value the Russian population. Stalin, of course, killed just as many, if not more, Russians and Jewish people than Lenin, but he was for communism within a state, and of course that required some development of a nationalist identity. There was a hierarchy within the state. Now, of course, the Soviet Union was the last Western empire, as Stratfor will tell you. It's the last European empire which was not Western. It was a cousin of Western civilization. But the last Western empire, or an attempt at empire, was of course the Third Reich, because they believed in Western civilization, but not particularly every moral facet of human rights or the rule of law. I will say that. You cannot say that they were not democratic in some form of totalitarianism, because of course Hitler was elected. But the ghost of Hitler has been used as a weapon ever since against people who got rid of Hitler, which is absolutely unbelievable. Generations of Europeans and Americans who fought Hitler, have been criminalised and set against each other through various cultural revolutions, you know.